Hello and welcome to Deft and Dorky. We are going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
We talk.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going? You good?
So good.
All
Like,
right.
so good.
All right. Well, today we're going to do a little chat about just general things you like and things you don't like about D&D, and if there's anything that you dislike enough to make changes. Uh, so, to sort of start off,
Yeah.
uh, I think both of us came to, and I mean sort of as opposed to other potential TTRPG systems, I suppose,
Mhm.
even though I have not really played any of them. So it's going to be
Right.
a little odd, but I came to D&D essentially through Critical Role.
Hmm.
Because I've told this story before, but I played D&D maybe once or twice, and it was, from my experience, was pretty dice heavy.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, it's a cool board game. And then I
Cool
saw
board
then I
game.
saw Critical Role do it, and I was like, you can do that with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the RPG element really kicked in and made me want to play. Uh, so I guess one of the things I like about it is that you can really dig into role play and really sort of explore different facets of humanity within a game,
Yep.
which is great. Um, and I think
Counterpoint.
that's okay.
D&D sucks.
Okay.
What we don't like about D&D. No, I'm just kidding.
Counterpoint, it sucks. Goodbye.
I'm just trying to balance out our conversation here. You know what I mean? I want to hit him hard and quick with the pros and cons of D&D.
Okay.
No, continue your thought. I don't mean to cut you off.
Uh, I think that you came into D and D in a very similar circumstance.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
that's why I play D&D as opposed to a different sort of system. And one of the big reasons that I have no interest in switching
Hmm.
is because I know the rules to a certain extent to where I don't have to think about them.
Yeah.
And if I switch
Well,
systems, then all the energy that I want to be spending doing the fun thing, which is the like role play and storytelling,
hmm
that energy then has to shift to, well, how does this work mechanically? And
there's a
I don't want to do
there's
that.
a ton of rules.
Yeah.
There's like a ton of like these systems are not like let's go play Sorry, you know what I mean?
Do
I have a
not pass
3-year-old and a
go.
1-year-old. Yeah, it's like I'm playing the only game we play is freaking Candyland. So yeah, I agree with that. You know, it's funny you mention that because like I think that recently I read something that Brennan Lee Mulligan said. Like he was talking about I've never watched it, but he has this kind of side series that he does on his own. It's not Dimension 20, but it is a very RP heavy show. Like if you watch Dimension 20, like every other episode is combat most of the time, you
Hmm.
know? Um, but he does like this is like a almost exclusive, and I haven't seen it, but this is what I read about. Almost exclusively RP based show. And he was getting interviewed about it, something. He said like, yeah, I use 5th edition because it's just like, superb for what we do or something, and he got some flack for it or criticism, or some people were just like, why do you use 5th edition for such an RP? Because like most of 5th edition rules and mechanics are around combat or whatever.
Yeah.
And he basically said what you did, which is just like I am so good at this part of the game. Like, I mean, he's a professional actor improver. Like he's made a
Yeah.
living out of doing it. And he's like, what I don't want to worry about is this part. And that's where 5th edition is so excellent. And he was like, I would argue that I'm using the perfect system for my game, even though it's so RP intensive. And a lot of people were like, oh, there's so many systems out there and there's so many really good RP systems. And he's like, well, I know this. and I don't need another system for what I am really good at, and for the stuff that like I don't really care about. Like, Fifth Edition is perfect.
I was going to bring this up because I read or somehow came across that
Oh,
same
yeah.
sentiment. Yeah.
Sorry to steal your thunder.
It's fine. That is exactly, I mean, why I have less and less interest in switching to a different rule set. And when I saw that Brennan Lee Mulligan said, I was like, that's it. That's it exactly.
This guy's really smart and really good at this.
It's like the parts that I want to do, and it's the way that I interpreted that what I heard of that, because it was paraphrased through some other people, but
Right.
was that like the part, basically kind of what I said, the part that you want to spend time on is open, and you can do it. And then the part that I also don't want to spend a lot of time on, which is the mechanics of combat, it's already set up.
Right.
And I don't really want to do stuff that has a lot of RP rules, because I don't want it to feel restricted.
Mm-hmm. I
So
would
that's
agree with that.
that's a big thing for me.
I while we're briefly talking about him specifically,
Mhm.
you liked Exandria XU, right?
The Cataclysm one,
Yeah,
yeah, it was very good.
super good. If you haven't watched it, anybody, like, even if you don't know anything about Critical Role, like, I think that's a great way. Like, I wish I would have introduced that to my brother first before he jumped into like episode 1 of campaign 2.
Yeah.
You know, like, luckily I didn't try campaign 1 to start.
Oh man, it's funny because it's like, it's actually really good, but like the production quality is so low because they were just starting out. And there's like some episodes where it's like, ow, my ears. But yeah,
I would love to, like, from the lore standpoint and everything that they did, I would love to, but I can't watch, like, some people be like, oh, you should watch fill in the blank comedy show, like Seinfeld, for example. Like, can't do it. There's a laugh track, too distracting. Like, so. But have you watched much Dimension 20 though? Because you told me you haven't.
No, right? I've seen tons of little clips, but I've never watched any. And I would like to watch some of it. I want to watch the one with Hank Green, but
I don't know if I've even seen that one.
It looks really good. The clips I've seen.
Dimension 20 with Hank Green.
Yep, it looks real good. But anyway, yeah, I really like the ability, the restrictionless ability that RP has with D&D. That's one of my biggest likes. You gonna say something?
Sorry. Just realizing who Hank Green is.
Oh.
Like, who's Hank Green? Oh, that guy. Yeah. I agree with that. I think that, so, I mean, one of the mass appeals for me is there are no borders and there are no walls and there are, like, you can do whatever you want.
Yep. And that's another thing that I like about D&D is that it's very flexible. Like the rules that are in place, I mean, if you just have I suppose you would have to have a moderately strong grasp of the rules as a whole, but there's a lot that you can just go around, and it doesn't make that big an impact negatively later down the road, which is great. If there's something you don't like, you can just change it.
It is kind of like the double-edged sword, though, because like it does make it difficult to wield. You know, like you being a DM, you must prepare. And like, gosh, man, I probably verge on over preparation all the time, but like I you know, there are so many games that I know. It's just like, yeah, pull out the box and let's start going. Like, I suppose for those of you that can do that with D&D, if you're just like, yeah, you know, like we just whipped out the starter set and just kind of went, and one person just kind of read from it. It's like, good for you. That sounds horrifying to me, but
yeah, I agree with that.
Freak that I am.
Yeah, I agree with that because one of the coolest things about D&D for me is also like how you can it can be as complicated as like a super complicated television show with like little plot drops and hooks and everything, and if everything, it takes a lot of prep, but you can line up everything to where nothing is inconsistent. And so your players can like take hints from these things that seemingly are not. It's like whenever you go back and watch on YouTube the Easter eggs for like some MCU movie or something, and they're like, they hinted at this way back here, and you're like, oh yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that does take a lot of prep.
It does. The other thing too is that like people could watch those movies over and over again. Like yeah. I'm not gonna watch one of our sessions.
What?
I'm sorry. Like I don't even rewatch. I haven't rewatched a single episode of like Critical Role or whatever. I guess I'm rewatching Dimension 20 with my wife, but like it is like, man, this is such a commitment, you know. So I'm sorry. But especially like when you play, we don't even play infrequently, we play frequently, like compared to a lot of groups.
Yeah,
playing every week is like, this is creme de la creme.
The elite D&D players here.
I feel like it really is, like especially like if you've got like a family and the obligations and stuff like that. Like I feel so fortunate that we can play every week, but like there is, so much that you do, and that gap is so long from 7 days or whatever. Like there's times where it's just like, you ask me like what happened a couple weeks ago, if it wasn't like a major plot point that I hung on to, then like I'm not gonna remember for crap, so
it's funny that you say that, because like growing up, TV shows were, you had to wait a week.
That's true. That's true. They were also like what, stuff. 22 minutes.
Well, or yeah, like 42 minutes.
Something.
Yeah. Most of the ones that, like Star Trek is the one I always compare things to, because it's my favorite.
Back in my day,
you had to wait a week. Sometimes, for cliffhanger of the season, you had to wait a whole like 6 months before you got to see and knew what happened.
We've come full circle though. I mean, screw you, streaming services that make me wait a week to watch the new show that comes out. I hate that. Let me be an adult and make bad decisions and binge watch the entire season in one night.
It's so funny, because it's like, it took how many man hours to produce a season of a show? You finish it in like 8 hours.
Yep.
Okay, when's the next one coming out? What? We worked
so
hard.
Some people like that. They're like, ooh, I want it drip fed to me. And I'm like, nope. Nope. Anyway. I am interested. Let me ask you this too.
Okay.
Because we're talking about like what we like about D&D, but like you specifically came to it because you had just some friends that were playing and they invited you over or something?
Yeah, I mean, D&D has always been a thing within pop culture that I sort of knew about, and I had like Michael that we play with had friends that played, and I played with him and his friends a couple times. But yeah, it was as I described, pretty dice heavy, not very RP heavy.
But that was like the first time that you actually like investigated it, like was playing.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I knew that it was like I didn't know any of the rules when I first sat down. They're like, make a something check, and I was like, how do I do that? And they're like, roll a d20, and I was like, what's a d20? And they're like, it's that one right there, and I rolled it, and I was like, 10. And they're like, oh, you got to add numbers to it. It's like, what numbers do I? It's on your sheet. Okay. I knew nothing.
Thrown into the fire.
I just knew it was some sort of game with some amount of dice.
Yeah. I was just thinking, because like you brought that up, and I was thinking about like, I knew that you guys were playing, and you had invited me before, and I think at the time, like I was playing WoW Classic, and I was like, I've got time in my life for that one thing, and WoW Classic. was like 3 things. It was like somehow doing that. But I was fortunate enough. I can't remember. I think it was my barber back where I lived previously before we moved out here.
Mhm.
I asked him, I was like, "Hey, any good podcasts? I'm about to drive across the country." And he's like, "Do you like D&D?" And I was like, "I have never played. I think that's the kind of thing that I would be into." And he's like, "Well, check out Dimension 20, specifically this one." And I was like, "Okay." And I remember driving across the country, nearly totaling my car on a freeway, driving 80 miles an hour because I could not see. I was laughing so hard, crying with like laugh tears. And I pounded in the entire first season of like the New York themed D&D that they do. And then from there, I don't think I was playing with you guys yet at that point. Was I?
I think
Did I start playing with y'all in Salt Lake City?
I thought you did, but
Maybe I
I
did.
am not
I can't
certain.
remember. Maybe I did. But I'm going to say for the sake of this podcast, because it's good content, better content, I should say, that was my introduction.
Okay.
So I was just kind of thinking about you guys listening, you people, put in the comments what got you into D&D, because that kind of thing is always super interesting to me. Like, how did you get into it? It's like, oh, my older brother, or like, I saw some nerd get beat up at school, and I went to befriend him, and he was being beat up because he carried around these dusty tomes that said Player's Handbook on it or whatever.
These little bits of plastic that had way too many sides on them.
Exactly. What are these rocks?
These aren't dice. They can only roll 1 to 6 on a dice.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, those are a lot of things we like about D&D. What do you dislike about D&D?
The thing that I dislike most about D&D is the thing that I dislike about every hobby that I have is that it's just too hard to get to. You know what I mean? Like life gets in the way of it.
Mm-hmm.
Scheduling, that's the other thing that drives me nuts about D&D. Like fortunately for us, it's just like, no, every Monday, not a question. That's where I'm at, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't, that's fine. We'll move on and hopefully play without. But I think sometimes, like, I am fortunate enough that this isn't the case, but social dynamics do come up. And it's like, I heard somebody say this the other. I was like, one of my D&D YouTubers was like that I listened to. But they were like, not all of your friends are D&D friends, and not all of your D&D friends are your friends. And I was like, that's an excellent point. That is an excellent point. It's like not a bad thing. Like there comes. That's another thing. Is like there's a certain amount of maturity that everybody needs to have when they play D&D, because.
Or
like,
if your table doesn't do that, then there's a certain amount of immaturity.
yeah, it's
Just
true.
as long as everyone's
but,
on the same page, I feel like it's fine.
Yeah, the recognition, like that's what I mean. Is like.
Yeah.
If not everybody is, then like, well, you got to have a certain amount of maturity to say like, we're probably not playing with this person anymore, or we're gonna have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like here's a prime example. Like one of the in-person groups that I have with some of our local friends here that have never played. We've played 3 sessions, and the last one went okay. Our friend group, the 4 of us, it's 2 couples. We can talk. Like we just talk. Like, you know, interested in each other's lives. We have very similar opinions. We're all very eloquent, annoyingly so. And I felt like we got through maybe an hour of content of D&D, and like we hung out for 4 hours, like playing. And it was just like something would come up, and it's just like, okay, another tangent here, and now we're talking about life again, which is not a bad thing, but it just like, okay, are we playing D&D or are we just playing a game, and it's the excuse that brought us together? You know what I mean? So, like, there's nothing really too much about the game that bothers me, except for all the social elements that can make it tricky. So,
that's fun. When you said that, it reminded me of we had some neighbors that we used to hang out with when we lived in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
and they would always be like, "You guys," because we lived in the same building and they were just downstairs. And like, "You guys should come over. We'll hang out and we'll play board games." And I was like, "Board games?
Yeah.
I love board games. I'll go hang out and play board games." And like every time we went over there, it was hang out, and then I would sit there, and occasionally, I wouldn't sit in complete silence, but I'm not incredibly talkative in those situations, and
Yeah.
board games just never came. And I was like,
Aw,
more than once
been-
this happened to me.
I've been duped. Yeah.
So yeah, I can see.
Um,
Yeah, we're gonna play D&D. You get there and like, all right, I got my dice set up. I got my character sheet. Like everyone just sort of chatting. Like, this is great and all, but can we do the thing that we said we were gonna do?
DM screen is set up. There's a map and everything, like literally everything. I'm just like,
Yeah, you're right about that thing.
yep, yeah, that's crazy. That's wild. The same story about your employer. That's crazy. Or like, whatever. And it's like nobody specifically,
Hmm.
but like it's just that you know, I feel like games are the excuse to hang out, and I feel like that's true for a lot of people's in their social encounters and experiences. But like when you have a hobby like D&D, which requires such a high level of investment and interest,
Particularly if your DM's trying to make it good, and they've spent
yeah,
hours beforehand preparing.
yeah,
Ugh. Can we please just play the game that I spent 5 hours preparing for today? I
Yep.
spent 5 hours preparing for it. We're only going to play a maximum of 4 hours.
Mhm.
Please, can we play?
My wife was like, hey, you seemed a little bit annoyed, because when you're married to somebody for like even the littlest thing, they're like, oh, that person's pissed off because I know you intimately.
Hmm.
And I was like, no, not really. I just feel like, all that time that I spent working on that. She's like, yeah, I'm sorry, we didn't really do much. And I'm like, we didn't, and that's fine. I'm happy to hang out. She's like, well, you're ready for next time we play, and I'm like, it doesn't quite work that way. Like, I'm sorry.
I have to store all of that in my RAM.
Yeah, exactly.
After I sleep,
And
that gets flushed.
We're not going to hang out for another couple weeks, so
Yeah.
I'm going to like have to read up all anyway. So,
Yeah.
here, I'm going to throw it back to you, and in the meantime, I'm going to try to think about something about the game that I don't like. That's
Okay.
not like outside of it. But
Right.
what drives you banana sandwich about the D&Ds?
Okay. Some things that I don't like are we talked about how I do like that the rules for combat are pretty set. What I don't like is there are many of those rules that don't make a lot of sense sort of
Yeah.
realistically.
Yeah.
And I get that because I want it to be ideally, like in an ideal world, everything would be realistic and you could just go and everything would make sense in your mind's eye as you do it. But they can't do that because of balance, because magic isn't real. And if you make something too strong, then it becomes a thing that you only do that strong thing, and then it becomes repetitive and boring. So they have to
Right.
do these balancing things, and it can be annoying. It is. I don't know if there are other systems that are better at it. But that is a thing.
you have an
that's the
example?
thing I dislike. I mean, just all okay.
I can
I
think
guess-
of one right now, but I want to better understand what you're saying.
It's okay. I guess it could be boiled down to like min-maxing, I suppose. When you have players that play the game for the crunchy aspects, the numbers, how can I make my character the strongest given this set of rules, then you get all these, like, even on YouTube you're going to go and find how to make the strongest whatever class, and at that point it becomes far less fun for me, when that is the objective,
Yep.
and not the exploration of a world or the exploration of ideas.
I agree with elements of that for sure. I don't disagree with any of it, but I just had specifically, like for example, the family group that I play with.
Mm-hmm.
I told all of them when they made their characters that they could take an 18 in their stats if they took an 8.
Mm-hmm.
And I regret that because I have 3 characters that have a +5 in their primary stat. And it is annoying as hell, especially because one of them is dex based and they're wearing a shield. So like their AC is 19 or 20 or some BS at level 4.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I get now why the standard array, it doesn't, like, I did it because it's like, as a player, it feels good.
Yeah.
But from like a balancing standpoint, and like the importance of that balance is like, I was thinking about it tonight, like, stakes are what make the game interesting.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel threatened, and if you don't feel like there's something to potentially lose, then like you're just kind of hanging around listening to somebody talk. Like I was thinking about this particular episode of like Critical Role tonight that I was listening to. The players agreed to do something, and it could mean that one of the people die. And I was like, that is a gamble. I, as a DM, would have a really hard time enforcing it, but it would completely deflate any sense of suspense anytime you did something that was potentially dangerous. And like that's what you're there for, is to like feel and experience those things. So that's like my weird tangential what's that word?
I think that's
Forgive
it.
me, everybody. I agree with what you're saying. Min-maxing that culture, that environment. Like the other thing that I thought of, like it bothers me when people get into the weeds about like real world physics in D&D. Well, this score means that this person can lift this amount of pounds, so it really should be this. It's like, it's silly, that doesn't work that way. Or like people computing like movement speed, you know? It's like, well, if I dash and I'm a tabaxi and I double dash because I'm a rogue and like I reached 1,001 miles per hour. It's like, come, dude, shut up. Like, they had to make this fit on a board game. Like, stop. So.
Yeah, and I don't want to like crush that completely, because it's like the mechanics of combat can be fun too, but when that's the primary driver is when it becomes not fun for me. Like, if you want to make a character that does this one thing really well, great, let's do that. But have something you don't do well, and something that's, you know, gonna come up.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? Flaws. Like, I've never seen a TV show or a movie where I'm like, oh, all of these really good, perfect individuals, like, there's no conflict. Like, come on, let's go. Like, every time in our campaign where you ask me to make an athletics check or a strength-based check, I mean, there's only so many of those. I'm always like, well, I got a negative modifier on this. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah, the threat of failure is what makes it fun. If you're like always going to succeed at everything, like there's certain things I'm like, yeah, I want to mostly succeed on this thing for this character. But if you're always going to succeed at everything, it's not.
Yeah.
It feels very boring.
Hey, here's something to go along with that. Like that character, Jace, in our campaign, he does have a 5 in charisma.
Okay.
And it makes me think that, like, okay, here's something that I think is not fun. Like, I think
we should clarify,
like
+5.
+5, yeah.
A 20.
Yeah, not a 20 in charisma, +5. Like when you're in combat and you miss, that's not fun. I think that's lame. Because it's like, well, my turn's done. Nothing happened. So sometimes I wish like I could tinker with the game mechanics a little bit to like for example, in my family campaign, I have a dex-based character, so they have a +5, so their AC is insanely high. like I don't think there's a lot of stakes in like, well, she never gets touched. It's like I know people are like, well, use like AOE stuff and whatnot. Yeah, I'm working on it. Okay, I'm still new with this shit. Like I don't want to take away somebody's ability to do something, but I also want to make sure that things are happening to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it. The more min-maxy things are, the tougher it becomes to balance interestingly as well.
yeah, yeah,
Because if you've got one character who just kicks all the ass, then you have to balance around that character.
yeah.
Which means that if anyone else chooses that, hey, today's the day I'm going to do stuff. No, you're not, because this
Yeah.
encounter has to be balanced for the strongest person. Otherwise, it's worthless. It's pointless.
And you can only be like, I'm gonna stick the Goliath in a cage with somebody really strong over here, and the 4 other people
Yeah.
that are fighting too. You can only do that so many times. Where it's like, okay, not every bad guy has what's the spell called that puts people in a cage?
Oh, force cage.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Is that what you
Is that
mean?
what I'm thinking of?
I don't know.
Like I remember watching something where it's just like, do you have one player that's way stronger than the rest? Well, do this where you separate the battle, and I'm like, okay, how many times can you do that though? Like realistically and
This is
feasibly?
becoming weird. You keep getting separated.
The last 3 fights, the first one he fell down and he was on a low ground and we were on a high ground. This fight, there's an invisible wall between us and him, and the big bad guy seemingly knew that he had to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's to your point about like one character that has a high AC. You don't want to punish them for that either. Like
Oh,
you want them to be like to feel good about not getting hit a lot,
yeah.
but you don't want it to be. It's just a tough balancing act. The more
Mhm.
extreme the difference is,
Right.
'cause you like you can be like, oh, the bad guy notices that you have a big old shield and a bunch of armor, and he's going to just only throw things at you that you have to make saves for, and they're going to
Right.
hit you if you for half even if you succeed. At which point you're like, why am I wearing this shield and armor? this is
Right.
not, this is less fun now. Yeah, it's a big balancing act for sure.
I'm trying to think of something about the game itself that I don't like. I am not a fan, in a similar vein of thought, of like the imbalance that exists between certain like classes, subclasses, or races.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the idea that like I'm not going to do that because that subclass sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely
Like
a similar vein.
I don't love that like sentiment or mentality because I'm just like, play it anyway. Like, it sucks against what, and compare it against what? Like, your DM can literally set the difficulty level for it if they're a good one, if they're doing a good job. So, I don't know. Like I think about that one particular, what is it, the Hunter subclass for Rangers?
Yeah.
Or Beastmaster?
Yeah.
Like everybody craps on that one, and I feel like it's still a sentiment today, and it's like, dude, they literally revised it, and it's actually not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, that was speaking of Critical Role Campaign 1. That was what Laura Bailey's character was a ranger that was a beastmaster and had a pet, and like it was awful. Like the pet was like, might as well not be here.
yeah.
In fact, it was kind of an ongoing joke that Sam would always be like, hate that bear.
Oh, that's funny.
And yeah, because it just didn't do anything. And Matt eventually did like basically make some extra rules to make it somewhat effective, but even still, it's if the story you want to tell is about you and your animal companion that's been with you through all of it,
Right.
then it's at some point it becomes a balancing problem. And the new Tasha's version is very very a very good improvement upon that.
Yep. Well, and I think people should take like inspiration from that. Like, if you look at this and you're like, I want to try this subclass because I like the idea of it, but you feel like it's underwhelming, like flipping talk to your people and bump it up however you feel like it would.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, you and I have done that with your current subclass, your subclass of sorcerer is a mixture of two
Yeah.
different subclasses. So
Yeah, mostly because I was like, can I just have the wild magic surge table?
well, and
That's
it's like the story you were trying to tell. So I was like, yeah, we can do that.
And we're still tinkering with it. Like,
Yeah, it's still
most recently, I like our like most recent thing. Like, you know, like, hey, if this doesn't really apply to this moment, we're just gonna. You said that you were gonna like go up or down one just from
I'm
there.
just gonna look and keep like slowly go out until we find one that makes sense or is interesting.
I think that's such a good idea, man.
Yeah, it's tough because like, and I went back and looked at the like the PHB table, and it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's just
It's not
there's
bad.
not a lot on there.
Right.
So
Yeah, there's some things. Yeah. I mean, gosh, the PHB version too. Like, you only get a surge on a 1.
Yeah.
You know how insanely hard that is to make happen?
I do now. Now that we've played 60 sessions.
Yeah. If anybody's watching this,
rules.
if anybody's watching this and doesn't know, we started. How did we start? We changed it so that
with just the rules as written, and we tried it for like a week or two, maybe. I don't remember if we.
Oh, did we? I thought we started off with a slight one. I thought we. If we did, then the next step was that whatever the number on the die was, if it was lower than the level of the spell that I cast, it would surge, right?
Yeah. And then at some
And
point,
even
we added disadvantage to that roll if you use sorcery points.
And
if
now
some kind of meta magic on it.
Yeah. And now I scale the dice down size-wise with each successive non-surge.
Yeah. So if
and you know the amount of,
go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say the amount of times that I get down to like a D6 or a D4 is crazy. Like, it is insane. Or it's like, well, I didn't surge again, and that was my second D4 roll. I guess I should cast a level 4 spell so I guarantee that shit happens.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I feel like now the frequency is getting to about where I want it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it every spell either.
No, I agree.
And I feel like it's in a good spot now as far as the frequency. Now we just got to work on the effects being relevant.
Yeah. It's like, well, this is not well, and we should also say that we're using a modified table that you found online, right?
Yeah.
And you've told me some of the things on it, like, that have happened but not been relevant. It's like, what was one of them that was recent? Like, I could see all, like, celestial, or like I would know if something's celestial. What was it? I can't remember what it was.
The one of them was any celestial has disadvantage on attacks on you for the next hour. And I was like,
which is like, we haven't fought a single celestial this campaign, I bet.
Yeah, it's like, it's weird because I went back through and looked through that table. I was like, maybe this table sucks, and it's like we just keep rolling all those weird ones that don't matter because there's a lot of good ones on there.
Yeah, I believe it. And I mean, like, that's not a terrible effect to have. It's just like,
yeah, it's
so niche.
Yes, very reliant on being relevant.
Here's something else I don't like about D&D, and it has nothing to do with it and everything to do with me. I don't like that I'm getting into D&D now as hard as I am when they're working on 6th edition or whatever they're not calling it.
one D&D to rule them all.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me a little sad. And I know for people that have been playing it for 20 years or whatever, how long of 5th edition has been out, 13 years or whatever, I get it. But, like, I like it, and I'm just using it. So
yeah,
leave it alone.
Because we, I've had this talk with Eric a lot, about like trying different systems, and he seems very interested in just trying new stuff all the time.
Right.
And the same argument that I give to him is like, I don't want to try new things. I want to make new stories.
Yeah.
Because
I
that's the reason I want to play the game, is the stories.
If I want to play a different game, like I'm probably gonna play not a tabletop RPG. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather just bust out. Sorry. Oh no, but like I mean, for real, like
I would play Settlers of Catan.
yeah, exactly. Like, let me do something that's hyper structured and all those things, because like I like you play D&D not for the game, but for the experience. You know, like I want to tell stories. I want to play pretend with my adult friends, which is so. Listen, if you go into sociological studies, like it's a very healthy thing to do. Okay, we're all grown-ups now, but we all still are children in some ways, and so we miss that play element. Anyway, so all of you guys, y'all can shut up and suck it.
I think anyone who's watching this is probably fine with that, but okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm just insecure, so okay. I'm gonna lash out.
All right, I understand. This is a safe place. Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
It's, I mean, that was a big difference for me, going from seeing it as a board game to seeing it as a role-playing game. That's... Man, there's nothing like it. After I figured out you could do it as a role-playing game, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
It is very interesting, though. Like, you've been playing for a lot longer than I have. Like, have you played every class?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I've only played... I think I've only had, like, 4 characters.
Yeah.
So...
And for as long as we've been playing, like, I mean, like, you and I have both been playing for years, multiple years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, like, it's interesting, because there's, like, so much about the game that are those kind of mechanics, but, like, we don't play this game for that, but I still get really excited about the idea of, like, oh, I want to play that. Like, I would love to try playing a paladin at some point, but it's kind of funny how it's, like, I'm not really playing it for the mechanics of it, though. As much as I get excited by it, it's like I can't wait to crit and divine smite something so I can roll lots of clickety clack. But
yeah, that's all. Like, it's why it's difficult to sort of be binary about what you like and don't like, because there's aspects of all of it that I enjoy. I just don't want to focus too hard on certain aspects of it. But yeah, every time I go to make a character, I'm like, ooh, what am I gonna play? And I like go at it from both directions. Like, what kind of story do I want to tell? But also, what kind of mechanics do I want to roll with?
Yeah. So here's something mechanical that I have thought about that I don't like about the game.
Okay.
I don't like things that take away your ability to do something. So, and this is going to get very specific, but like the mechanic stunned, I think is lame. Anything that can cause you to lose your turn entirely is lame. I love mechanics like poisoned, where it's like, okay, something bad is happening to me, but I can still do something about it. Like, it sucks that I have disadvantage, but I could probably have avoided the circumstance, or I can still do something about it. You know?
Yeah. Stun,
the other
the things that take away player agency are certainly less fun.
Stun, sleep, paralysis, like...
Yeah, I feel like they have to be used delicately. I think that they still can be used. But yeah, it has to... As with many things, the more it makes sense that you're like, oh no, I definitely thought this was a thing that could happen, and now it's happening. Feels better than, why did this just happen out of nowhere?
It's the one thing about Baldur's Gate that I would love to incorporate into my game is the range of status effects that exist that are not going to completely dismantle somebody's ability to do something.
Mhm.
Like all the martial like abilities that you can get, like what are some of them? Like maimed, bleeding, I don't remember some of the other one, but I feel like there's several of them depending on what kind of weapon your martial character is holding. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
cool. Like, put that in D&D because martial characters just roll a dice, and that's their turn. Like, I want to give you something a little bit extra because not everybody can be a battle master. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and that's fair. Like there are lots of things that you could add in, and that's one of the cool things about D&D is you can totally just add those things in if you want
you
to.
can do it. You can absolutely do it.
Yep. It's just you sometimes do have to be careful with balance because like we've said already this episode, it's like if you get something that's too strong and that becomes the only thing that your character does because it's by far the strongest thing you can do, then it becomes boring.
Is there anything in our games that you intentionally like? Are there elements like, for example, like I am never going to use stunned against my players because I think that's lame. Are there things that you intentionally are like, I'm leaving this out because I don't want to deal with it, or like I think it's dumb or bad?
Um I don't think that I've just completely cut anything out. There are certain things that I give a lot of consideration before I would use it, like stun,
Yeah.
which I did use in the campaign one when you guys went to fight Traylor. It's like he's don't do it.
We all got stunned though. It wasn't
Yeah.
like the last dragon fight. I remember you used powered stun on me, and I was like, gosh, dang it. Luckily, I had summoned something, so like I still get to have a turn.
Yeah.
But oh man,
Yeah. And that's another thing that it's I kind of you just reminded me of is something I kind of like about D&D is well the way that I'm doing it anyway. And that is that magic like I try to run magic like as if it were in a real space to the point that if something becomes a regular thing, then there are going to be experts who try to counter that.
yeah,
And then once it's countered, then there's another counter coming from the other side. And I've tried to sort of do that a little bit because I think it's interesting. And that's the thing I like about D&D because it's totally something you can do.
yeah,
Which I brought it up a couple times, but like I think Traylor like deciphered something for you guys that was not designed to be deciphered. uh, so yeah, things like that I think are very cool, and I think that I would encourage anyone who plays a wizard in my campaigns to, if they want to, go ahead and look into things like that, like countering
yeah.
different things.
Yeah, I feel like magic is physics. Like in this world, it's like, dude, it's just as real as anything else. Same thing with like the gods. It's like to deny the gods in these world is like denying climate change or the spherical nature of our planet. Like, I don't know. That's what's fun about it. Is like getting out of your head and like embracing that kind of shiz. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
That would never happen. No, it wouldn't. But we're playing D&D right now, so it is happening.
we are 5 adults
We're all going
pretending.
to pretend that this is what's happening. Otherwise, the whole premise of the game falls apart.
You're right, Jared. That would never happen because we're all just 5 lonely people staring at a computer screen coming up with an excuse to talk to each other.
That's right.
Way to go, buddy. I don't know a Jared, by the way. That was all false in case anybody was curious.
So everyone's going to look into it now.
Well, I guess I know lots of Jareds, but I don't like regularly associate with one. Jared's untrustworthy.
So I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask was: are there any of these things that you dislike enough to make changes? Which I guess we kind of already touched on. Like you just don't use. You stay away from certain effects on your players, like stun.
It's something that, like, I will say this, like, as I'm preparing for my next session, like, I've recognized, like, my game could use more choice for my players. And, like, I need to identify, it's like I'm viewing it as like a video game moment where it's like the narrative is paused and you have to put your cursor on the left thing or the middle thing or the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I now need to mentally prepare for 3 outcomes. Like, I need to make sure that there's a consequence tied to each of those things.
Yep.
So, like, I hate things that take away player agency. And people could argue, like, well, you know, they chose to potentially get paralyzed or whatever. It's like, I get that. And so I overcorrect probably by, like, hyper emphasizing choice in my games. So,
yeah, and it's it's one of those things. It's like there are always going to be some choices, and this is true of many games, not just D&D, video games. There's always going to be some choices where the outcome is essentially the same.
right. Yeah.
And a lot of times that's just how it goes. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But I do like when sometimes your choices take the story in a very different direction.
Yeah.
Those choices, especially when you are able to get a glimpse of what your other choice would have done. Those are very interesting. I don't even have any examples, but but those seem cool.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I just want my players to feel like they, you know, I was thinking about it this way the other day, because it can get really complicating and your tree can really start to branch out in a million different directions, and that becomes unwieldy as a DM. And I was kind of thinking, like, no, it's less of a tree and more of a funnel. Like, there is a very wide portion where they can play in, and the closer they move towards the direction that they want to go, like, I can filter those walls down so that there's less room for them to bounce around in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you chose to go in the cave, now I'm in control, and you can choose how to solve this problem, but you are going to be confronted with it because you chose to come down here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but
yeah, so I don't know. I wanted to talk about like the things we kind of are talking about already, but I wanted to get more specific about it. When you are prepping for session, what, like, are there things that you get more excited about than others?
the answer is yes. I'm trying to think about what does it for me. Like, I am excited for the choices that they will have to make. I am excited, like, what I'm most excited about is, like, the inevitability that they are going to do things that I don't know how to, that I wasn't expecting. You know what I mean? Like, I look forward to them solving the problem in a unique way that I did not think of.
Yeah.
So I try my best to stay open to those moments, but yeah.
Yeah, those are those moments are sometimes difficult, especially if you had a like specific solution to a problem. And I try not to do that the best I can anymore. Like, this is
hard,
a
though.
solution. It's not the solution.
Yeah. It's hard for sure. So It's funny you mentioned this question specifically. I have changed the way that I prep. I used to have just like a Word doc, and I would have headers, and I felt like it made my DMing very linear in nature because like I'm literally moving from top to bottom on a page. And so I have now since moved to I use an online world builder thing called Kanka. And I have it allows me to do a lot of things, but mostly like connect. I feel like instead of going straight top to down, because that's how like Microsoft Word or Google Doc is formatted,
Yeah.
it allows me to branch. And as a result, I've been able to be like, okay, choice, instead of like choice. For those of you listening and not watching,
One of those was spread out, and the other one was linear.
like for example, like here, people that are watching. No, I can't share my screen. That look like crap on the thing. I have a campaign map, and I basically like put pins all over it, and my players have the map, and they can see some of the locations, but they can't see what they are. And so when they're like, "Hey, we want to go here," I'm able to be like, "Sick! I can personally open the pin and see all the things tied to it," and I'd be like, "Awesome! I know everything that's on that map tile," and I feel like I'm less forced to do that kind of thing. So like as far as what I've been really excited for playing is like giving my players the choice and seeing how it's going to unravel, because it has already allowed me to be a little more flexible. Because like I noticed in one of the previous times when I was doing my old method, they did something that I kind of didn't expect as far as ordering. Like I was like, I think that they'll do this and I think that they'll do that, so I'm ready for whatever may happen with these. But I didn't expect them to do them in that order, and like it wildly altered what happened, you know? And so it's like, oh, on the fly, I gotta figure this out. I was super about it, but it was like, all right, well, the guy that was gonna be there is dead, so now what? You know? So
Yeah,
I don't know.
those
What do
are-
you like?
when I'm prepping, I really like setting up clues. Is what I enjoy doing a lot of. Like, oh, they're gonna go through this area, so I'm gonna make sure that there's a thing here, and if it's, we've talked about not setting up important things behind a roll, but I like to set up things that are not essential but are very cool behind
A
rolls.
reward.
Yeah.
For 1,000%. I love that.
And I'm like, it's because not, and a thing that I'm trying to get better at is the way I describe things, but not so much as to be like, also, you're in a room, there's nothing here, but there is a table. Like, oh, well, I guess let's interact with the table. I try to incorporate more so it's not obvious, but I try to where it's still interesting. It's a difficult thing to do because there's an argument for only describing the table. So I don't know. I really enjoy when my players interact with things in the world. It's one of my favorite things is like, oh, they hear some description like, I wanted to look at that thing. I'm like, yes, let's go look at that thing.
Yeah.
roll me a d20 and we'll see what you know about the thing. And then if they roll well, I get to give them something and that may or may not spark something for them.
Right.
But it may spark something later. So that's good for me.
If your favorite part is clues, Isaac, how sad are you most of the time?
Sometimes I'm quite sad.
I imagine that there's a lot of clues that don't get picked up on.
Well, it's one of those things that I get to, like, if someone like grabs it and it's like, wait a minute, I know that thing. That's
that feels good.
But even if they don't, later on when there's something that's connected to that clue and I bring it up and if no one still makes that connection, I can be like, also, you do know that, and I'll go ahead and explain that these things are related. And that's also fun for me just because plot development is very fun for me as DM. as a and as a player, really. I just
Mhm.
I think it's really cool when someone sets something up to be found, but not tripped over.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
totally. Mhm. I You mentioned like rewarding players for a good roll or whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
having something for that.
Yeah.
I'm doing Curse of Strahd for my family, and they're about to enter. They're about to blow it up. Like as far as like they're about to leave the prologue and they're about to get into like overland travel and doing whatever they want, you know.
Okay.
So I'm like looking at the encounter table, and the encounter table in Curse of Strahd is like a lot of encounter tables. It's pretty meh.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna restructure this, and I'm also like, if they roll an at 20, I'm gonna make sure that I've got like 3 or 4 scenarios that would work for wherever they're at in that area, that would just be super cool for them to run into. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like you know, I hate the idea that somebody could roll a 20, and it's like, well, cool, you don't have to fight something today. That
Yeah.
seems like I rolled an at 1, honestly.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. It can be both, right? Because like
Mhm.
a lot of times you're like, yes, I want to fight something cool, but then it's tough to. It's I don't necessarily want to just fight something that is going to be static. Like I don't want to roll dice until it's dead. I want to have to
Yes.
think about it.
Yes.
And if it's
Yeah,
dynamic, if it moves, if there and that's I guess that's a thing that we should have talked about is that sometimes combat can be boring, and one of the ways that I'm trying to start dealing with that on my own is to not always have only one like goal,
yeah.
which most of the time in a combat your goal is to kill the thing before it kills you. That's
Hmm.
it. But there
Yep.
are like you can have a thing that like you have to put out a fire before before a certain amount of threshold is gotten through to the town, or
Hmm.
you like I sort of did this with the daring thing. You have to kill all the zombies before the wall comes down,
Yeah.
um, or you have to like keep a VIP safe, and
Hmm.
like out of like there's like so many different things that you can do for combat that I am sadly only recently trying to explore.
Yeah. Well, it's not intuitive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not
Especially when
apparent for sure.
combat is as long as it is. Like, combat is an investment of time. Like, I'm preparing for this session on Thursday, and there's a combat involved there, but I want to accomplish 1 or 2 like major story beats as well. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
will I be able to? Because
Yeah, probably
combat
not.
is going to take 90 minutes, like
Yeah.
probably. Um, Unfortunately, like I only have 3 players, so like it can move a little bit quicker. But
Yeah.
it is like, to your point, it's funny. I think that's a wonderful idea. I think it's also important to make sure it's consistent in what you're trying to do. So like our one shot that we did that you were a part of,
Yeah.
that was in the Strahd campaign world that I still kick myself thinking back to this. For all y'all watching, I led them through this like crypt experience essentially, and the whole point of it was they were supposed to get to the bottom and kill the darkness, the bad thing, the monster, or whatever it was. And this particular thing was being like summoned back to its full power, so there was like a ritual involved, and I was like, this is going to be cool. There's going to be this like summoning component, and I want to make sure that they have like, I gave you guys, I don't even think, if you like, I made sure that there were at least 3 or 4 different ways to stop the ritual.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like they could just kill everything, which is fine, but that's probably going to be one of the hardest. They could delay the process by like pushing these buttons or like doing something with the runes or whatever it was. Like I was like, cool, I've got it set up.
Mm-hmm.
And like the rituals was stopped. You guys succeeded in that. And then you were like, so we got to kill this thing, right? Like the whole time we've been told we got to come down here and kill it. And it's like, I had the thing like mummified or whatever, or it was
Mm-hmm.
like encapsulated or encased in an Iron Maiden kind of scenario.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, it was such a dumb moment where I was like, oh yeah, I guess that could just happen.
Yeah, because I remember because you were like, like multiple times that we were told do the thing we could not,
Yes.
which was kill
Yeah.
the thing because we could only incarcerate it essentially.
Yes.
And then we got there and like, okay, we're ready to do it.
Oh my gosh. So dumb. And what's funny is like I could have just kept playing. Like, sweet, you stopped the ritual, so the thing is like basically super hampered. What's the word I'm looking for? Like it was in a
Hamstrung,
very
handicapped.
I was in a very weakened state. Like I mechanically built this thing out so that throughout the ritual it could get stronger.
Mhm.
And you guys had stopped it. Like it got to like 30% power, 40% power, or whatever. Like,
Okay.
well, we could have finished the fight, and I could have just given it an HP total, and you guys could have like, sick, we're
Yeah.
gonna kill it now. But man alive. So cool fight, Brian. Too bad
It was great.
you like swung
I
on
loved it.
miss. Yeah. I was so concerned with like I'm gonna make this fight interesting, and like I missed on the number one thing. It's like, how about the point of it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing to keep track of because you're trying as a DM to like, you always as a DM, I want to make the combats meaningful and interesting because I feel like the RP is meaningful and interesting. That's like, so I
Right.
want to keep because the combat takes so much time as a percentage wise. Like I don't want it to be static. I don't want it to be, well, I don't move because I would just get attacks of opportunity against me. So we're all just going to stand base to base and roll dice and hit each
Right.
other until one of us falls over. So you go in and try to make those combats interesting, and I can get so like sucked into making the encounter interesting that I forget about
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
they're there. Yeah.
Oh, man alive. Funny. Oh,
Yeah.
man. I like D&D. D&D's good.
Yeah, and I don't
So
think
many
there's-
reasons to like it.
I don't think there's anything I dislike about it enough to change for all the reasons we already went over. And
Yeah.
if there is something that I dislike about it, the thing that I like about it is that I can change that one piece and go from
Yeah,
there.
And most of the things that I don't like about it have nothing to do with it. It's people, you know?
Stupid humans. God, I was getting in the way of everything.
Let's just start over. Just wipe out the entire human race and just begin again as small individual cells.
Man, I have to wait a long time for D&D to come out again, though.
Yeah, that's true. Somebody would come up with it. And his name was Barry Buybacks. Weird.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty good. We can stop there. So thanks for chatting in with me. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
See you later, everyone.